I moved 2 months ago, he said, casual as a weather report, while demanding I sell the home I spent 30 years paying off. He thought his rich lifestyle and fancy title intimidated me. He was wrong. I did not scream. I just hung up the phone and forwarded a single file to my attorney. My son thinks he is evicting me, but he just signed his own financial death warrant. My name is Eleanor Graves. I am 62 years old, and I was standing in the kitchen of the home I had spent the last 30 years paying for, watching the steam rise from my coffee mug. Outside, the grey Midwestern sky over Hawthorne Springs looked heavy, threatening another week of sleet. Inside, the local radio station was playing a commercial for car insurance, the same tinny jingle I heard every morning at 8 o'clock. It was a small, quiet life, but it was mine. When the phone rang, cutting through the static of the radio, I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled. The caller ID said, Nathan, my son, my only child. I picked up the receiver, a foolish warmth spreading in my chest. I thought perhaps he was calling to say he was coming up for the weekend. He lived only 3 hours away, or so I believed. Nathan, honey, I was just thinking about you, I said, cradling the phone against my shoulder. Hey, Mom. His voice came through, crisp and unbothersome. There was no warmth in it, just the efficient cadence of a man who checks boxes on a to-do list. Look, I don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to give you an update. Big news. Oh, did you get that promotion? Better, he said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. I took the CFO position at TechVantage. We moved. We're in Brighton Ridge, Arizona now, closed on a place near the canyon 2 months ago. I froze. The ceramic mug in my hand felt suddenly heavy, like a stone. I stared at the peeling wallpaper by the fridge, trying to process the words. Arizona, I whispered, my voice trembling. You moved to Arizona 2 months ago. Yeah, well, it was a whirlwind, he said, dismissing my shock as if it were a minor clerical error. The market is booming here. Mom, you should see the house. 5,000 square feet, pool, the works. Sabrina loves it. He had moved across the country. He had packed his life, sold his old place, bought a mansion, and started a new job. And for 60 days, he had not thought to dial my number. I looked around my living room. The faded Persian rug I had bought when Nathan was a toddler. The framed photos of his high school graduation on the mantel. The scuff marks on the doorframe where we used to measure his height. Suddenly, everything around me looked like stage props for a play that had already ended. I was guarding a museum for a boy who did not exist anymore. Nathan, I said, gripping the edge of the counter. Why didn't you tell me? Oh, come on. Mom, don't start. He sighed, the sound sharp with impatience. I've been busy, incredible busy, and you know how you get all emotional. I didn't want the drama while I was trying to close the deal. Drama. My heartbreak was drama. His betrayal was business. Anyway, he continued, shifting gears instantly to a tone I recognized from his days in business school. That's actually why I'm calling. Now that I'm settled, we need to look at your situation. I've been running the numbers. That house in Hawthorne Springs. It's a dead asset. Mom, it is bleeding money in heating and maintenance. It doesn't make sense for you to be there alone. This is my home. Nathan, I said, it's equity sitting in a box. He corrected me. I found a great assisted living community near here. Not right here, but close enough. If we liquidate the house now, we can put the cash into a managed fund. I can control the yield. I felt cold. Not the chill from the window, but a deep, freezing sensation in my gut. He was not inviting me to Arizona to be with him. He was managing me. I don't want to sell, I said firmly. Mom, listen to me. His voice dropped, becoming patronizingly soft. The lender has already reviewed the file on your property. The valuation is good, but the market is softening. We need to move fast. I just need you to sign a few papers. I'll handle the rest. You won't even have to deal with the agents. My breath hitched. The lender, I asked. My voice barely audible. What lender? Nathan Hu looked at my file. Just some people I work with. He stammered, just for a fraction of a second, before recovering his arrogance. Don't worry about the details. It is complicated finance stuff. You wouldn't understand the terminology. Just trust me. I'm doing this for your own good. I stood there, clutching the phone, and realized with terrifying clarity that this was not a conversation. It was a notification. He had already shown my deed to strangers. He had already promised my home to a bank. The first time I felt a pain this sharp was when my husband, Tom, collapsed in the yard, leaving me alone in this world. That was a tragedy. This was an execution. My son, the boy I had scrubbed floors to feed, had not just left me behind. He was selling the ground out from under me to finance his swimming pool. I looked at the receiver. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him how he dared. But the coldness in my chest turned into something else. Something hard, something like steel. Mum, are you there? He asked, annoyed by my silence. I'm here, I said. I forced my voice to be steady. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. I need to think about it. Nathan. Fine. He huffed. But don't take too long. The offer won't sit forever. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. The silence of the house rushed back in, but it no longer felt empty. It felt like a war room. He thought I was a confused old woman who would sign whatever piece of paper he put in front of her. He thought he could erase me. I walked over to the table, picked up the file folder I kept near the phone, and stared at the wall. You forgot one thing. Nathan. I whispered to the empty room. I taught you how to walk. I can certainly teach you how to fall. I sat down at the chipped kitchen table, the silence of the house pressing against my ears. My hands were trembling, not from age, but from a memory that suddenly felt sharper than the biting wind outside. I closed my eyes, and I was back at Northfield Care Systems, 30 years ago. It was 3 a.m. The air smelled of industrial bleach and sickness. I was wiping down a metal bed frame, my back aching from turning heavy patients who did not even know my name. Back then, Nathan was safe in our drafty apartment, sleeping under 2 heavy quilts. I used to pause in my scrubbing just to imagine his breathing, steady and warm. I remembered riding my bicycle home in February, the tires slipping dangerously on the black ice that coated the streets. I had a bag of discounted apples and a loaf of day-old bread balanced on the handlebars. The wind cut through my thin coat like a knife, freezing the sweat on my back. But I pedaled harder because I wanted to make French toast before he woke up for school. I did not own a car then. Now, he drives a climate-controlled SUV through the Arizona desert. He has probably forgotten what it feels like to have cold, wet socks. He has forgotten the sound of a bicycle chain rattling in the snow. The day we signed the papers for this house at 14 Maple Lane, I was terrified. The mortgage seemed like a mountain I could never climb. But 10-year-old Nathan ran through the empty rooms, his sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. He stopped in the center of this very kitchen, his eyes wide and bright. "This is ours." "Mom," he had shouted, spinning around. "No landlord, no landlord. Baby." I had told him. Crying tears I tried to hide. "This is ours. To keep ours." I took double shifts, then triple shifts. When he got into that fancy university, I stopped buying new shoes. I stopped seeing my friends because I could not afford the coffee or the time. My knees swelled up until they looked like grapefruits, throbbing in time with my heartbeat. But I told myself it was worth it. He will not have to empty bedpans, I thought. He will not have to count pennies at the grocery store. Then Tom got sick. The diagnosis was a hammer blow to our quiet life. Every dime we had saved went to doctors and treatments. At first, Nathan called. Then the calls became texts. "Big deal closing," he would say. Traveling to coast. He was chasing the life I paid for, while I was chasing time with his dying father. I remembered the Thanksgiving 5 years ago. I had roasted a turkey that cost me a week of grocery budget. At noon, he texted, "Stuck in a meeting. Can't make it." Tom and I ate in silence, the clinking of silverware echoing in the dining room as we stared at the empty chair. Later that night, I saw the photo on social media. Nathan was at a steakhouse in the city, holding a glass of wine, smiling at a blonde woman, Sabrina. When Tom died, they finally came here together. Sabrina walked into my home not like a guest, but like an appraiser. She wore shoes that cost more than my car. I saw her eyes darting from the crown moulding to the antique lamp. She did not see memories. She saw liquidation value. "Oh, Nathan," she had said, touching the worn velvet of my armchair with 2 fingers as if it were dirty. "This is so cute. Very vintage." That was when the mom stopped and the mom started. It was a joke at first, then a habit. "Yes, ma'am," he would say when I asked about his life, shutting me out with cold politeness. He started dropping hints about downsizing and being closer. But whenever I asked about apartments near them, he would talk about their vacation to the Maldives instead. I looked down at the plastic container in my hand. I was scraping the rest of my lunch into it for tomorrow. Habit. Survival. I looked at the nail hole in the wall where the family portrait used to hang. I could hear Tom's voice, rough from the chemo, whispering what he told me near the end. "Eleanor," he had said, squeezing my hand with a grip that was already fading. "If he is too busy to come for dinner, he should not be too busy to respect you." 3 days after the call. The first crack in the dam appeared in the form of a priority envelope. It was from a bank I did not bank with. Postmarked from Phoenix. I sliced it open with a dull knife, my hands steady but cold. Inside was a formal notice. Confirmation of change of primary contact address. The loan attached to 14 Maple Lane. My house, my sanctuary, was now directing all correspondence to a condo unit in Brighton Ridge, Nathan's unit. My eyes scanned down the page and stopped at a line that made the blood drain from my face. Co-borrower Nathan Graves. I had never signed a co-borrower agreement. I had never authorized a change of address. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm. This was not just a son forgetting to call his mother. This was someone using my name. I drove to my local bank branch 20 minutes later. I did not storm in. I wore my old beige coat and walked with a slight shuffle. playing the part of the confused elderly woman they expected me to be. "Hi, Mrs. Graves," Lila said from behind the glass. She was a sweet girl. I had nursed her through a bout of pneumonia when she was 7 years old. "Hello, Lila," I said, offering a weak, trembling smile. I am a little confused about some mail I got. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Could you explain why my statements are going to Arizona, Lila typed on her keyboard, her face bathed in the blue light of the monitor. "Oh, it looks like the account status was updated last week," she chirped, completely innocent. "Your son sent over the paperwork. Since he has the limited power of attorney, he added himself to the title to help manage the equity line." "Power of attorney?" I asked, gripping the edge of the counter. I don't remember signing that. It is right here." "Do you want to see?" Lila turned the monitor. There it was, a scanned document, officially stamped. Limited power of attorney. At the bottom was a signature that looked like mine. It had the same loop on the G, the same slant. But then I looked closer. My middle name is John. On the document, in the printed section below the signature, it was spelled Jean. And the signature itself, it hesitated on the upstroke of the E. I write my name in one fluid motion. This person had paused. "Oh," I said softly, forcing myself to breathe. I must have forgotten. "Thank you, Lila." I walked out of the bank with the ground feeling like sponge beneath my feet. When I got home, the mailbox was full again. This time, it was a glossy brochure for Sunrise Canyon Memory Care in Arizona. Clipped to the front was a sticky note from the facility director. "Can't wait to meet you on the tour." Nathan booked. I was standing in the driveway, staring at the brochure, when my neighbor, Mr. Walker, leaned over the fence. "Eleanor," he called out, waving a garden trowel. "Say, when is the big day?" "The big day?" I asked. "The move," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I saw Nathan talking to that real estate fellow in the yard a few weeks back. Said you were heading down to Arizona to live out your golden years in the sun. I'll hate to see you go." My stomach turned over. Nathan had been here. He had stood in my yard, while I was inside sleeping or working, and discussed selling my home with a stranger. I went inside and dialed Nathan's number. He answered on the third ring, the sound of typing clicking furiously in the background. "What is it?" "Mum, I am in the middle of a spread." "Nathan," I said, keeping my voice level. "Why am I getting mail from a memory care center, and why does the bank think you are a co-borrower on my house?" The typing did not stop. "Mom, you are spiraling," he said, his tone dismissive, like he was talking to a toddler. "Those are just options. I looked into the memory care place because, well, you are getting older. It is just a tour, and the bank stuff that is just back-end paperwork to secure the best rates for your assets. But I didn't sign anything. Nathan, the signature, it isn't right. You are imagining things," he snapped, finally stopping his typing. "You probably signed it months ago and forgot. See, this is exactly why you need help. You are confused." "I am not confused," I said. "I want to see the contract." "You don't need to see the contract." "Mum," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, low pitch. "That is between me and the lender. You just need to pack." He hung up. That night, I did not sleep. I cleared the kitchen table and laid it all out. The deed to my house. The original loan papers from 30 years ago. The letter from the bank in Phoenix. the brochure for the old folks' home. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together with a terrifying sound. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a son trying to help his mother. This was a heist, and the target was my life. I looked at the fake signature again, tracing the hesitation in the ink. Okay, Nathan, I whispered to the empty room. If you want to play legal games, let's see how you like the rules. Nora, an old friend from my days at Northfield, slid a business card across the diner table like it was contraband. Take it. L, she whispered, looking over her shoulder. Harold Pike. He is older than dirt, but he is sharp. He saved my sister's house when her nephews tried to pull a fast one. He eats sharks like your son for breakfast. I looked at the card. It was plain, cream-coloured, with no fancy logos. Just Harold Pike, attorney at law. 2 days later. I sat in his waiting room in downtown Redwood County. The carpet was worn, and the air smelled of old paper and peppermint. I felt small. I felt like a mother betraying her child just by being there. I almost got up to leave, thinking I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But then the heavy oak door opened. Mrs. Graves, a voice rumbled. Harold Pike was a mountain of a man, well over 70, with wild white hair and eyes that missed nothing. He did not rush me. He did not check his watch. He sat behind his cluttered desk and listened for 40 minutes while I stumbled through the story of the phone call, the bank letter, and the brochure. He took notes with a fountain pen, his hand steady. I need a second set of eyes on this, he said finally, pressing a button on his intercom. Jordan, can you come in here? The door opened again, and a young woman walked in. She was sharp, dressed in a tailored suit that looked more New York City than Redwood County. My daughter. Harold grunted. She practiced corporate law in Manhattan before she came back to help her old man. She knows how these snakes think. Jordan Pike sat on the edge of the desk and picked up the scanned copy of the power of attorney I had brought. Her eyes narrowed instantly. This is garbage, she said flatly. The notary stamp is blurry, and the witness signatures look like they were written by the same hand. If this passed a bank's compliance department, either the bank is incredibly incompetent, or someone on the inside is getting a kickback. She flipped through my notes until her finger stopped on a name. Sabrina. She read aloud. Sabrina Graves. Maiden name, I think it was Lowell, I said. Or maybe Howell Jordan spun her laptop around and started typing furiously. A moment later, she stopped. I thought that sounded familiar. She muttered. She turned the screen toward me. It was a court docket from a civil case in Nevada, 5 years ago. Estate of Arthur P. Miller vs. Sabrina Lowell. She was sued by the children of a 70-year-old man she was dating. Jordan explained, her voice hard. She convinced him to take out a reverse mortgage to fund a business venture of hers. The business failed. The money vanished, and she disappeared before the lawsuit could stick. They settled out of court. My hand went to my mouth. That is Nathan's wife, I whispered. This is called financial elder abuse. Mrs. Graves, Jordan said, looking me dead in the eye. It is not always a stranger on the phone. Usually, it is family. They use affection as a weapon. They gaslight you into thinking you are losing your mind so they can take control of your assets for your own protection. I listened, and every word felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. The comments about my memory, the rush to sell, the help with the paperwork. So, what do we do? I asked, my voice trembling. Do I call the police? Not yet, Harold said, leaning forward. If you blow up at them now, they will claim it is a misunderstanding and destroy the evidence. We need to catch them in the act. Jordan nodded. We need proof of intent. From now on, you record every call, every time they mention the house, money, or your health. You get it on tape. Act confused. Let them explain their plan. Let them hang themselves. Harold opened the county property records on his computer. The good news is, the deed is still in your name, he said. They haven't transferred it yet. They are still in the prep phase. We have time. Jordan pulled out a legal pad and began drawing a timeline. She marked the date Nathan got his finance degree, the date he met Sabrina, the date Tom died, the date the bank letter arrived. Look at this, she said, tapping the paper with her pen. Every major move they made coincides with a vulnerability in your life. Tom's death. Your retirement. They aren't reacting to your needs. Eleanor. They are executing a business plan. I looked at the timeline. It was a cold, calculated map of my life. I stood up, smoothing the front of my coat. I felt different, heavier, but stronger. I spent 40 years signing medical charts and changing bedsheets. I said, looking from Harold to Jordan. I never thought I would be sitting in a lawyer's office plotting revenge against the boy I potty-trained. It is not revenge, Mrs. Graves, Harold said softly. It is justice. Well, I said, picking up my purse. Whatever it is, I am ready to work. The phone rang at 7 o'clock in the evening. I was expecting it. I had the voice recorder app running on my cell phone, which was tucked safely inside the pocket of my cardigan. I took a deep breath, picked up the landline receiver, and pressed it to my ear. Hello, I said, keeping my voice small. Hi, Mom, Nathan said. He was on speakerphone. I could hear the hollow echo of the room. Sabrina is here too. We wanted to have a family meeting. Hi, Eleanor. Sabrina's voice floated through the line, sweet and sticky like syrup that had been left out too long. We have been so worried about you. Honey, you sounded so erratic the other day. Have you thought about seeing a doctor? Maybe a specialist for your nerves? I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. My nerves were fine. My heart, however, was breaking. I am fine. Sabrina, I said, just tired. That is how it started with my Aunt Linda, Sabrina said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. She started getting agitated, confused about money. It is just cognitive decline. Eleanor, it is nothing to be ashamed of. But honestly, it would be safer if you let Nathan hold on to your important papers, just so you don't lose them. We can handle the bills and the insurance. You shouldn't have to burden your mind with that. Exactly. Nathan chimed in. His tone shifted, becoming brisk and professional, the same voice he probably used to fire employees. I have been looking at the numbers. Mum, if we sell the house now, we can put the capital into a safety fund. I will manage it. I can get you a return that is 3 times what you are getting now. Right now, you are just sitting on dead equity. It is a waste. Dead equity, I repeated. My home. The place where he learned to walk. Nathan, if you are so worried about me, why did you move to Arizona without telling me? Why did you leave me here if I'm so confused? There was a pause. A silence that stretched for 5 seconds. I didn't want to upset you, Nathan said finally, though the excuse sounded thin. I knew you would get emotional. And let's be honest, Mum, it is not like you can travel. You hate flying. You are stuck there. We needed to build our life. We just want to make it easy for you. Sabrina interrupted, speaking over him. That is why we drew up the transfer. It is just a temporary transfer of ownership. It puts the deed in Nathan's name so he can handle the sale and the movers without bothering you. We actually spoke to Dr. Evans at the facility? Oh, at the centre. And he agrees that minimizing stress is key for patients with your profile. My blood ran cold. Patients with my profile. They had not just looked at houses. They had discussed my medical sanity with a stranger. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them I knew about the fake signature and the bank fraud. But I felt the weight of the phone in my pocket. I needed them to say it. I don't understand, I stammered, forcing a tremble into my voice. Transfer ownership, but this is my house. I don't know if I should sign anything without reading it. Mum, stop it, Nathan snapped. The facade of the concerned son cracked, revealing the frustration underneath. You are being difficult. You are acting like someone who is not capable of making rational decisions. If you keep refusing to listen to reason, I might have to petition the court for guardianship. Do you understand what that means? It means the state decides that you are incompetent. The word hung in the air. Incompetent. The boy I had carried on my hip, the boy whose college tuition I had paid for by scrubbing other people's filth, was threatening to declare me legally broken so he could steal my savings. Nathan is just saying that because he loves you, Sabrina added quickly, playing the good cop. But her threat was even darker. We don't want it to come to that. Eleanor, we don't want the court to force you into a state-run nursing home. Those places are terrible. If you just sign the papers we sent, we can get you into the nice private suite at Sunrise Canyon. Please, don't make us do this the hard way. I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out, hot and fast. But my hand on the counter was steady. I need to go lie down, I whispered. My head hurts. Just think about it. Mom, Nathan said, his voice cold. I will call you tomorrow. Have the papers ready. The line went dead. I stood in the dark kitchen for a long time. I did not turn on the light. I looked down at the towel I had been holding and realized I had twisted it so tight the fabric had begun to tear. For weeks, I had told myself that Sabrina was the villain. I had told myself that she had twisted my son's mind, that Nathan was just weak, just a follower. But I had just heard his voice. He was not being led. He was leading. He was willing to strip me of my dignity and my freedom to fund his lifestyle. I slowly pulled the phone from my pocket and stopped the recording. You want to talk about the hard way, Nathan? I said to the silence, my voice devoid of any warmth. Fine. Let's do it the hard way. The next morning, I laid the phone on Jordan's mahogany desk. The recording played, filling the small office with Nathan's voice threatening to declare me incompetent. Jordan listened, her face like stone, scratching notes onto a yellow legal pad. He actually used the word guardianship, Jordan said, stopping the playback. That is not just mean, Eleanor. That is a legal threat. He is building a case to strip you of your civil rights. If we don't move now, he could file an emergency motion and freeze your assets before you even know what hit you. So we lock the doors, I said, my voice steady. That afternoon, we executed the first phase of my defense. I signed a new will and established an irrevocable trust. It was a complex document, But the clause that mattered most to me was the beneficiary. If anything happened to me, my estate would not go to Nathan. It would pour directly into the Tom Graves Scholarship Fund, designed to pay tuition for nursing students from low-income families in Hawthorne Springs. He won't see a dime. Will he? I asked, pen hovering over the signature line. Not a single cent. Jordan confirmed. And because it is an irrevocable trust, even if he gets guardianship later, he can't touch the principal. It is locked in a vault he doesn't have the key to. I signed my name. It felt like cutting an umbilical cord, but one that had already been strangling me. Next. I went to a small credit union on the other side of town, one that had no affiliation with the big national banks Nathan used. I withdrew the majority of my savings from my old account, leaving just enough to keep it open, and transferred everything to the new one. If Nathan or Sabrina tried to help me by accessing my old accounts, they would find an empty room. I also made a quiet call to the HR department at Northfield. An old supervisor owed me a favor. By 5 o'clock, I had a signed affidavit on company letterhead confirming that I was currently employed, punctual, and displayed excellent cognitive function and attention to detail. It was a shield against their lie that I was losing my mind. But paperwork was not enough. I needed to see the enemy's camp. I packed a single bag. I did not take my car. Nathan might have a tracker on it for insurance purposes. Instead, I took a taxi to the station and bought a ticket on a Greyhound bus. It was a 28-hour ride to Arizona. The bus smelled of diesel and stale sandwiches, and my back ached against the thin seat. But as I watched the landscape change from grey Midwest fields to red desert rock, I felt a strange thrill. For the first time since Tom died, I was not waiting for someone to save me. In Brighton Ridge, the heat hit me like a physical blow. I washed my face in a gas station bathroom and put on my best Sunday dress. I went to the real estate office that listed the luxury condos in Nathan's complex, posing as a potential buyer looking for a retirement property. The agent, a young man with too much gel in his hair, was eager to talk. Oh, the Graves residence, beautiful unit, he gushed, thinking I was just a nosy neighbour. Mr. Graves is quite the investor. He actually mentioned to me that he is bringing in some collateral from an out-of-state property to secure the financing on a second unit. He is very leveraged, but he seems confident. I smiled and nodded, while inside my stomach churned. Collateral. My house. I took a cab to Tech Vantage. I did not go in, but I stood in the lobby, looking at the digital directory. There was his face, smiling that confident smile I used to love. Under his name. It didn't just say CFO, it read Partner. Southwest Real Estate Growth Fund. He wasn't just trying to pay off his mortgage. He was using my home as seed money to buy his way into a partnership. I walked around the building to the employee parking lot. I knew Sabrina's car from her social media posts, a white convertible with custom plates. I waited behind a dumpster for 40 minutes until I saw her clicking across the asphalt in high heels, phone pressed to her ear. I held my breath and pressed record on my phone again. No, listen to me, she was saying, her voice shrill and unguarded. The old lady is cracking. She is terrified of the nursing home. Once she signs the power of attorney, we can liquidate the house in Hawthorne Springs within 30 days. That cleans 6 figures into the portfolio before the quarter ends. We will have the buy-in for the partners' meeting. She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Yeah, I know. It is easy. She thinks we are doing her a favor. She got into her car and drove away. I stood there in the heat. The recording saved safely in my pocket. That sentence, "she thinks we are doing her a favor," was the final nail. I took the bus back home, exhausted but electrified. When I got to my kitchen table, I didn't just see papers anymore. I spread out the map of their plan, marking every lie, every date, every dollar. "You want a war?" "Nathan," I whispered, pinning the HR letter next to the trust document. "Then you better be ready to lose." The net began to tighten on a Tuesday morning, not with a bang, but with a series of emails that pinged into my inbox like incoming mortar rounds. Jordan called me first. Her voice was tight with suppressed energy. "We got the handwriting analysis back. Eleanor," she said. "The expert is prepared to testify that the signature on the power of attorney has a 99% probability of being a forgery. He found tremor marks in the loop of the G that indicate the signer was moving slowly, trying to copy an image rather than writing naturally. That was the first strike. The second came from an unlikely source. A junior loan officer at the bank, a young man whose conscience had apparently weighed heavier than his ambition, had contacted Jordan's office. He admitted that he had flagged the application because of the address discrepancy, but he had been told to push it through. "He sent us the internal email chain," Jordan told me, and I could hear the grim satisfaction in her tone. The branch manager actually wrote, "Just to prove it, the son is a high-value prospect, and his wife promised to bring over her portfolio. They sold your security for a promise of future business." Then Harold uncovered the ghost of Sabrina's past. He found court records from Nevada involving a Sabrina Lowell. The victim's family had settled out of court to keep it quiet, but the daughter was willing to talk. I sat in front of my laptop that afternoon for a video call with a woman named Dolores. She looked tired, her face lined with the kind of grief that never quite heals. "She was an angel at first," Dolores told me, her voice breaking over the bad connection. "She cooked for him. She reorganized his medicine cabinet. Then she started telling the neighbors that Dad was slipping. She'd say, 'Oh, poor Arthur. He doesn't know what day it is.' By the time we realized she had refinanced the condo, Dad was too medicated to even understand what he had signed. I looked at Dolores and saw my own future staring back at me. If I stopped fighting, I would be her father. 'I am so sorry, Dolores,' I whispered. 'Don't be sorry,' she said, wiping her eyes. 'Nail her.' I closed the laptop with a cold resolve settling in my chest. This was no longer just about my house. If I did not stop her here, there would be another Dolores, another Arthur, another stolen life. But while we gathered our ammunition, Nathan and Sabrina were firing back. My phone buzzed constantly with links sent by Sabrina. Top 10 risks of living alone for seniors. Why assisted living is a gift to your children. Virtual tour of Sunvale Resort. It is just so lovely. Eleanor, she texted. Why don't you go for a trial weekend just to see it was a trap? If I stepped foot in that facility, they would claim I had admitted I needed care. Then came the escalation. I was drinking tea when a patrol car pulled up to my curb. My neighbors were watching from their porches as a uniformed officer walked up my driveway. I opened the door before he could knock, standing tall, wearing my best cardigan. "Ma'am, we received a wellness check request," the officer said, looking uncomfortable. An anonymous caller reported that there was an elderly woman at this address who was confused and possibly a danger to herself. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced a smile. "I am Eleanor Graves, officer," I said clearly. I am drinking Earl Grey tea and listening to the news. Would you like a cup? He came in, looked around at my spotless kitchen, chatted with me for 10 minutes, and left, looking apologetic. But the damage was done. They were trying to build a police record of my instability. Jordan called me 10 minutes later. They are moving fast. Eleanor, she said, and for the first time, she sounded truly worried. Nathan just filed a preliminary petition in Arizona courts. He is asking for emergency temporary guardianship based on imminent financial risk and distance from family. He is trying to use the jurisdiction there to bypass the courts here. Can he do that? I asked. He is trying, she said. If a judge there signs it, he can freeze your accounts before we can even argue the venue. I hung up and walked to the hallway mirror. I looked at my reflection. I saw the grey hair I usually dyed myself to save money. I saw the wrinkles around my eyes from years of working night shifts. They looked at this face and saw a victim. They saw a check to be cashed. They think I am weak, I said to the glass. I walked to my desk and opened my old laptop. I created a new folder on the desktop. I named it For Jordan. One by one, I dragged the files in. The recording of Nathan threatening me, the screenshot of the bank email, the photo of the fake signature, the notes from my conversation with Dolores, the police report number from the wellness check. I was 62 years old. I was a widow. I was a mother. And I was about to drop a nuclear bomb on my son's life. Sunday night arrived with the heaviness of a coming storm. Nathan had requested a family Zoom at 7 o'clock, claiming we needed to talk like adults. I sat in front of my laptop, the screen glowing blue in the dim kitchen. Jordan had spent an hour with me earlier, walking me through the screen recording software. Do not interrupt them, she had said. Let them talk. The more they talk, the more they dig. I clicked. Join meeting. The screen flickered, and suddenly, there they were. Nathan sat in his home office, wearing a crisp polo shirt, looking like the picture of success. Sabrina sat beside him, holding a glass of white wine, offering a tight, sympathetic smile. Hi, Mom, Nathan said. Glad you could figure out the link. I managed, I said, keeping my face blank. Great. I am going to share my screen, he said. I prepared a little deck so we are all on the same page. A PowerPoint presentation replaced their faces. The first slide was titled Graves Family Asset Optimization. It was sickening. He flipped through charts showing long-term care costs rising by 8% annually, followed by a graph of property values in Hawthorne Springs. Then came the case study, selling my home immediately to fund a unit at Sunvale Assisted Living. You see, Eleanor. Sabrina's voice floated over the graphics. Sunvale isn't a nursing home. It is a community. They have art classes. They have a heated pool. We are just trying to get you into a safe environment before things get worse. I watched the cursor move over the screen. They had already decided. I was just a liability line item that needed to be moved to a different column. Now, here is the reality, Nathan said, switching to a slide full of dense financial terms. I have already leveraged the equity in your house to secure the bridge loan for our new property here. I locked in a fantastic rate, 3.5%, which is unheard of right now. If you renege on this plan, or if we delay the sale, that financing falls through. I would be left holding a significant amount of bad debt. It would ruin my credit. He was not asking for permission. He was telling me that he had already spent my house. I looked at the little green dot on my camera, remembering Jordan's instructions. "Nathan," I said, forcing my voice to sound small and trembling. I am confused. Which bank did you use for this loan?" "First National of Arizona," he answered quickly, annoyed at the interruption. "And who is the contract named after? Did you sign for me?" "Mom, we went over this." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I signed as your agent, using the limited power of attorney you sent us last month. The bank has it on file. It is all legal." I felt a cold thrill shoot down my spine. He had just admitted, on video, that he used the forged document to secure a loan for himself. "But if I don't sign the sale papers?" I pushed. "What happens then?" "Then I lose the condo." "Mum," he snapped, his patience evaporating. "And I lose the deposit. And I look like an idiot to my partners. Do you want to do that to me?" Sabrina placed a hand on his arm, then looked into the camera with a pitying expression that made my skin crawl. "See, honey," she said to him, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "She doesn't remember sending the papers. Her memory is really getting bad, isn't it?" She let out a short, tinkling laugh. "It is scary how fast she is slipping." There it was. The gaslighting. The proof that they were building a narrative of my incompetence to cover their fraud. Nathan nodded, composing himself. "Look, Mom, it is done. I have already paid the deposit for your room at Sunvale. The movers are scheduled for the 15th. Don't make this difficult. We are carrying this whole burden just so you can be comfortable." I looked at my son. I looked at the man who used to run to me with scraped knees, the man I had sacrificed my own dreams for. I realized then that I was not looking at family. I was looking at a parasite in a polo shirt. The cord between us did not just fray, it snapped. "Mom?" he asked, when I stayed silent. "Did you hear me?" I reached for the mouse. My hand did not shake. "I heard you," I said softly. "Good. Now, I will email the notary instructions and I clicked the red Leave Meeting button. His voice cut off mid-sentence. The screen went black. I sat in the silence of my kitchen for exactly 10 seconds. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt lighter than I had in years. I opened the folder on my desktop named for Jordan. I dragged the video file of the Zoom call into it. I added the audio recordings of his threats. I added the photos of the fake signature. I added the handwriting analysis report and the dossier on Sabrina's past lawsuits. I right-clicked and compressed the folder into a single zip file. I renamed it Graves Case. Final. I opened my email and composed a new message to Jordan Pike. I did not write a long explanation. I did not ask for reassurance. I attached the file and typed 2 words in the subject line. Do it. I hit send. And then I went to the kitchen to make myself a sandwich. I was starving. 2 days later, Nathan called to say he was flying in. He claimed he wanted to help me organize the sale and that he was bringing a mobile notary to save me the trip. I told him that sounded wonderful. I even told him I would bake his favorite apple pie. When I hung up, I turned the oven on, not to bake for my son, but to set the stage for his downfall. The smell of cinnamon and baked apples filled the house, a scent that used to mean family, but now smelled like bait. On the morning of the meeting, the house was silent, but it was not empty. Jordan, Harold, a forensic handwriting expert named Mr. Vance, and Detective Miller from the Redwood County Elder Abuse Unit had arrived an hour early. They parked their cars 3 blocks away and entered through my back door. We sat in the living room, reviewing the plan in hushed tones. When she puts the pen in your hand, Jordan instructed, that is the signal. I set the dining room table. In the center, where I usually placed the roast, lay 4 neat stacks of file folders, one for Sabrina, one for Nathan, one containing the handwriting analysis, one with the bank fraud emails. At 10 o'clock sharp, the front door opened. Nathan walked in, wearing his travel suit, looking tired but determined. Sabrina followed, her eyes instantly scanning the room, and behind them trailed a young, hesitant woman with a notary stamp in her bag. Mom, Nathan said, putting on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Smells great in here. See, we brought Ms. Davis to handle the paperwork. Quick and painless. This house, Sabrina muttered, running a finger along the wainscoting as she walked toward the table. It really will fetch a pretty penny in this market. We should list it by Friday. She did not know she was standing in the middle of a minefield. We sat down. The air was thick. Sabrina didn't waste time with pleasantries. She unzipped her leather portfolio and slid a thick stack of documents toward me. Okay. Eleanor? She said, her voice brisk. We highlighted the signature lines. This transfers the title to the trust Nathan set up, and this one gives us power to liquidate the contents. Just sign here, and here. I picked up the pen. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at Jordan, who was standing in the shadowy archway of the kitchen. I don't think so, I said, dropping the pen. Detective Miller stepped out from the kitchen, his badge glinting on his belt. Jordan and Harold followed, with Mr. Vance bringing up the rear. The room seemed to shrink. Please remain seated, Detective Miller said, his voice filling the room. I am Detective Miller with the Redwood County Sheriff's Department. Nathan's face drained of all color. He stood up so fast his chair tipped over. What the hell is this? He stammered. Mum, who are these people? This is an ambush! Sabrina shrieked, clutching her portfolio. This is a violation of privacy. We are leaving. I wouldn't do that, Jordan said, stepping forward and tossing the handwriting analysis report onto the table. Not unless you want to add flight risk to the charges of fraud and forgery. Sabrina froze. Forgery. Nathan choked out. That is ridiculous. Is it? Jordan asked. She pointed to Mr. Vance. This is a court-certified forensic document examiner. He has confirmed that the signature on the power of attorney you used to secure a loan against this house is a forgery. A bad one. Mum sent that to me. Nathan lied, his eyes darting around the room. She signed it. Then produce the original. Jordan shot back. Because the one the bank has is a digital scan with digital artifacts that suggest manipulation. Nathan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Detective Miller pulled a notebook from his pocket, and regarding the intent, he said, flipping a page, we have a recording of a Zoom call from Sunday. Let me read a quote. She is slipping fast. And another from Mr. Graves. I already leveraged the equity. If she reneges, I lose the condo. The detective looked up, his eyes hard on Nathan. Tell me, Mr. Graves, Miller asked quietly, you call that concern for your mother? Or do you call that grand larceny the young notary? Ms. Davis looked terrified. She backed away from the table, holding her hands up. I didn't know, she whispered. I was just hired to witness a signature. Look at the document. Ms. Davis? Jordan said, sliding the paper Sabrina had tried to make me sign toward the girl. Does that look like a standard real estate listing agreement? Or does that look like a document stripping Mrs. Graves of all legal rights to her property effectively, immediately? The notary looked at the paper and went pale. She looked at Sabrina with disgust. You said this was a standard transfer, Ms. Davis said. Detective Miller stepped closer. I am forwarding this entire file to the district attorney's office this afternoon. I strongly suggest you two do not leave the state. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, the rats turned on each other. Sabrina spun toward Nathan, her face twisted in ugly panic. I told you, she screamed at him. I told you this was too risky. I told you we should have just waited for the competency hearing. You said she was stupid enough to sign me. Nathan yelled back, his voice cracking. You were the one who needed the cash for the buy-in. I stood up. They stopped screaming. Nathan looked at me. He looked for the mother who used to smooth his hair and tell him everything would be all right. He looked for the woman who would give him her last dollar. But that woman was gone. He looked into my eyes and saw only a stranger who had just watched him die. Mom, he whispered, his voice trembling. Please, get out of my house, I said. 4 months later, the air in the Redwood County Superior Court felt colder than the winter wind outside. The judge had combined 2 dockets for efficiency. First was Nathan's petition for emergency guardianship over me. Second was the preliminary hearing regarding the charges of elder financial abuse brought by the state against Nathan and Sabrina Graves. Sabrina arrived separately. She had hired her own lawyer and was wearing a simple, inexpensive beige cardigan, trying to look like a confused housewife rather than a predator. When her counsel spoke, painting her as a naive spouse who only followed her husband's instructions and believed the power of attorney was legitimate, I saw Jordan smirk. Jordan stood up and submitted the files from Nevada. She laid out the pattern of behavior, the lawsuit from the Miller family, and the sudden settlement. Sabrina stopped crying instantly. Her act dissolved under the weight of her own history. Nathan looked terrible. His suit, usually impeccable, was wrinkled at the elbows. He looked like a man who had not slept in weeks. His lawyer tried to argue that his client was merely a concerned son, acting out of love to secure his aging mother's future. Mr. Graves was simply trying to prevent a financial crisis, the lawyer argued. He was proactive, not malicious. Then Jordan played the audio. My son's voice filled the courtroom, clear and damning. If she reneges, I lose the condo. I would be left holding a significant amount of bad debt. Then came the testimony from Lila at the bank and the email chain from the loan officer, who admitted he was pressured to ignore the red flags. The narrative of the good son did not just crack, it shattered. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand. My hands were shaking, but I clasped them together on the wood railing until they were still. I did not look at Nathan. I looked at the judge. I worked night shifts for 30 years, I said, my voice quiet but filling the room. I wiped floors and changed bedpans so my son could have a tuition and a warm bed. I thought we were a team. But when I received that bank letter, and when he tried to force me into a home on a Zoom call, I realized I was not his mother anymore. I was just an asset he needed to liquidate. Jordan stepped forward for the final question. Mrs. Graves, she asked, do you feel that you are currently unable to manage your own life and assets? Do you feel you lack the capacity to make decisions? I looked straight at the judge. No, Your Honor. I said. I am sane enough to know exactly who is trying to steal my house. The defense crumbled. My family doctor, my supervisor from Northfield, and even the police officer who had conducted the wellness check all took the stand. They described me as sharp, independent, and completely lucid. The foundation of Nathan's guardianship petition, that I was a confused old woman, evaporated. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. He denied the guardianship petition with prejudice. He affirmed that I was of sound mind and legal capacity. He validated the new irrevocable trust and my new will. Then came my final decision, delivered through Jordan. Mrs. Graves has amended her estate plan, Jordan announced to the court. Mr. Nathan Graves is permanently disinherited. The residual estate will pass to a blind trust for the benefit of any future grandchildren, to be managed by an independent third-party trustee. Neither Nathan nor Sabrina Graves will ever have access to a single penny of the funds, nor will they have any decision-making power regarding the property. Nathan slumped in his chair. It was not just about the money. It was the realization that he had played a high-stakes game against his mother and lost everything. As the prosecutor announced that Sabrina would be facing multiple felony counts and that Nathan was now under investigation for conspiracy and fraud, the bailiff moved to escort them out. "Mom," Nathan called out, his voice cracking with a desperation I had not heard since he was a child. "Mum, please, I am sorry." I paused for a second. I heard the word, Mom. It pulled at a heartstring that was 62 years old. But then I remembered the dead equity. I remembered the fake signature. I turned my back. I picked up my purse and walked out of the double doors without looking back. Outside, the air was crisp and smelled of rain. I stood on the courthouse steps and took a deep breath. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jordan. "Your assets are safe. It is over." I looked out at the street. My life would be quieter now. The holidays would be lonely. There would be no family dinners. But as I walked toward the bus stop, I held my head high. I had lost a son, but I had kept my dignity, and from this day forward, no one would ever sign my name for me again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know where you are tuning in from, and if you have ever had to deal with family members like this. Please don't forget to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and press the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it.